I never told my stepdaughter that there was one place in the city I had kept locked for years. Not because I didn't trust her, but because I understood exactly the kind of man she married. The moment he entered our family, I knew he wasn't looking for love. He was looking for assets. So I hid the key somewhere he would never think to look. Until the day the bank manager called me, his voice shaking, "Sir, your son-in-law is here." And he brought bolt cutters. I smiled, because I had been waiting for this moment for a very long time. Before we begin, I just want to say thank you for being here and for taking the time to listen. If you're watching this right now, take a moment to let me know where you're watching from in the comments. Your city, your country, anywhere in the world. I read every comment, and it reminds me that none of us are alone in stories like these. Also, a quick note, some parts of this story have been dramatized for educational and storytelling purposes. Any resemblance to real people or places is purely coincidental, but the lesson behind it is very real. I'm sitting here right now, and I'm telling you this story. My name is Thomas Richardson. I'm 63 years old and I live in Chicago. For the past 35 years, I've worked as a financial advisor. Nothing glamorous, just someone who helps people make sense of their money and their futures. Boring work, most people would say, but there's something about it that teaches you how the world really works. You learn that people are predictable. You learn what they want, and you learn what they're willing to do to get it. It's January 2026 right now. 1 year ago, my life changed forever, but I didn't know it was coming. Nobody ever does. I have a daughter named Olivia. She's 29 years old, and she works in marketing for a tech company here in Chicago. When I tell people she's my daughter, they sometimes pause and ask if she's my biological daughter, and I always say the same thing. She's my daughter. That's what matters. Blood doesn't make family. Time does. Love does. Showing up every single day does. Here's the truth, Olivia's biological father was never in the picture. Her mother, my wife Dorothy, had Olivia when she was barely 20 years old on her own, with no support from the man who fathered her. Dorothy raised Olivia for the first 5 years of her life as a single mother. Then I came into their lives. I was 33 years old when I met Dorothy. I fell in love with her, and when I married her, I didn't just get a wife. I got a 5-year-old girl who needed a father. Olivia was my stepdaughter technically, but I've never thought of it that way. From the moment I held her hand, from the moment she called me Dad, she became my daughter. My real daughter. The only one I've ever had. I raised her from age 5 to 14. 9 years of taking her to school, helping with homework, teaching her to ride a bike, going to her soccer games, listening to her dreams. When she was young, she wanted to be a photographer. She'd carry a camera everywhere, snapping pictures of the world around her. I told her she was talented. I meant it. Those were good years. Simple years, safe years. Then Dorothy got sick. She was in the hospital for a month. Olivia was 14 years old. I remember sitting in that room, watching my wife fade, and seeing my daughter realize for the first time that the world wasn't safe, that people could be taken away. That love wasn't enough to stop death. Dorothy died on a Tuesday morning in March 2010. I remember the exact date because it's burned into my memory. I remember Olivia holding her mother's hand, squeezing it one last time. I remember Dorothy's last words weren't to me. They were to Olivia. I couldn't hear them. I was standing back, giving them space, but I watched my daughter's lips. She was crying silently. After Dorothy died, Olivia had nobody but me. No other family, no mother, no biological father who cared. Just her stepfather. Just me. And I made a decision that day, standing in that hospital room, that I would be enough. I would be mother and father and everything she needed. I would protect her. I would make sure she never felt abandoned. I would make sure she knew she was loved. I did that for 15 years. I worked hard. I managed the money that Dorothy had left behind, money she'd carefully set aside for Olivia's future. Money that Dorothy had protected with documents and plans and a safe deposit box at First National Bank. Dorothy was smart that way. She thought ahead. She knew that a mother's job doesn't end when she dies. The best mothers, they leave behind armor. They leave behind protection. They leave behind love that reaches across time. Olivia grew up to be this incredible woman. Independent, smart kind. She had dreams. She wanted to find someone who would love her. She wanted to build a life. And I was happy for her. I wanted her to find love. I wanted her to be happy. And then she met Derek Hayes. I remember the first time she mentioned his name. We were having dinner together, just the two of us, like we did most weeks, and she said, "Dad, there's someone I want you to meet." She smiled when she said it. That smile. God, that smile was beautiful. It was the smile of someone who thought she'd found something good, something real. I should have trusted my instincts. I should have seen it coming. But I didn't. I just saw my daughter happy, and I wanted that for her. A few weeks later, she brought him to dinner. Derek Hayes walked into my house like he owned it. Tall, handsome, confident. He had the kind of smile that makes people want to believe him. He asked me questions about myself, my work, my life. He asked about Olivia's childhood. He asked about Dorothy. He asked about the house, about the neighborhood, about what kind of area we lived in. He asked a lot of questions, and most of them seemed normal enough. But there was something in the way he asked them. Something calculated. Something that made me uncomfortable. That night after Derek left, I couldn't sleep. I sat in my study and I thought about it. I thought about the questions he'd asked. I thought about the way he'd looked at Olivia. Not the way a man looks at a woman he loves, but the way a man looks at something he wants to own. The next morning, I bought a journal. A nice one, leather-bound, thick pages. I told myself I was being paranoid. I told myself I was reading too much into it. But I also told myself that I'd made a promise to Dorothy, and I intended to keep it. I was going to protect my daughter, no matter what it took. The dinner table feels smaller than usual. It's September 2022, and I'm watching my daughter meet the man she's been dating for about 3 months. His name is Derek Hayes, and something about him makes my skin crawl. He looks perfect, of course. That's the first thing I notice. Handsome in an almost calculated way. Expensive watch, tailored shirt, the kind of man who knows he's being watched and enjoys it. Olivia is glowing beside him, nervous but happy. She reaches for his hand under the table, and I see her smile waver slightly when he doesn't immediately reach back. As Tom. Derek says, leaning back in his chair with the confidence of someone who's never doubted himself. "Tell me about the family business. How much are you managing these days?" The question is casual, but something about it isn't. It's too specific, too calculated. "I'm a financial advisor," I tell him. "I work with clients on retirement planning, investments, that kind of thing." "And Olivia's trust?" he asks. "Does that fall under your purview?" I glance at Olivia. She looks embarrassed. "Derek, I told you about Mom's estate planning," she says softly. "I know, babe. I'm just interested. It's important to understand family finances before things get serious." He smiles at her, and I see her relax slightly at his reassurance, but I don't relax. Something in the way he asked about the trust bothers me. It wasn't curiosity. It was reconnaissance. It was a calculated probe into something that should remain private until the right moment, if ever. The trust is Dorothy's legacy, I say carefully. It's set up to protect Olivia's future. That's really all you need to know at this stage of your relationship. Derek's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. Of course. I respect that completely. I just want to make sure I understand what I'm getting into. You know, if Olivia and I get married someday, I'd want to know exactly what we're working with. It's just practical planning. The conversation moves on to other topics, his job in finance, where he's from, his hobbies. But throughout the meal, I'm watching. analyzing, noticing the way he steers every conversation back to money, the way he asks detailed questions about Paul Olivia's godfather and how long they've known each other, the way he positions himself between Olivia and me literally and figuratively, inserting himself into every exchange. I notice how he touches her, possessive, not affectionate, how he corrects her gently when she speaks, how he laughs at her jokes like they're somehow amusing because they came from her, not because they're actually funny. When Olivia excuses herself to get dessert from the kitchen, Derek leans forward. His demeanor shifts slightly. The charm is still there, but underneath it I sense something else, something colder. Look, Tom, I know this might be fast, but I really care about your daughter. I see a future with her. I hope you can see that I'm serious about making her happy. She deserves someone who appreciates her and protects her. Oh, that's good to hear. I say, though something in my chest has gone cold. Ma, she's special. He continues, his voice taking on a different tone. Smart, beautiful, and from what she tells me, well provided for. That's really important to me, actually. I grew up without much stability. Having someone like Olivia, someone grounded, financially secure with family support, that means everything to me. It represents safety. It represents a future where I don't have to worry. There it is. Not love for my daughter, but appreciation for what she represents. An asset, a prize, a solution to his own insecurity and hunger, a pathway to security that doesn't depend on his own effort. I think about Dorothy's trust, about the $2 million insurance policy, about the $1.8 million house, about the $700,000 in other assets. All of it protected, all of it waiting for Olivia, all of it potentially within Derek's reach if he plays this right. I'm glad you're thinking about her security, I say carefully. Olivia deserves someone who respects her independence. Of course, Derek says smoothly. I do respect her. That's why I want to protect her. A woman needs a strong man to lean on, don't you think? After dinner, as Derek leaves and Olivia walks him to the door, I sit alone at the table. My hands are shaking. That cold feeling in my chest has spread to my spine, a sensation of wrongness that I can't quite articulate, but absolutely cannot ignore. I think about Dorothy. I think about the trust she set up 15 years ago. I think about the letter she wrote to Olivia hidden in a safe deposit box with only 2 keys in existence, waiting for a moment when her daughter might need to know that her mother anticipated danger. Dorothy, even dying, somehow knew that her daughter would need protection. That night, I lie awake thinking about Derek, about the way he looked at Olivia not with love but with calculation, about the questions he asked, each one a small probe into our family's financial situation, about the way he positioned himself as both protector and interrogator. I realized then that I need to start paying attention. Not in an obvious way, not in a way that would push Olivia away or make her defensive, but I need to document what I'm seeing. I need to write it down. The next morning, I call Paul. Something's wrong, I tell him. I can feel it. Paul listens without interrupting. When I finish, he says, "Trust your gut, Tom. Always." That was when I decided to keep a record. Not out of suspicion exactly, but out of a deep instinctive awareness that something predatory was unfolding right in front of me. I couldn't stop it yet. I couldn't confront it. But I could witness it. I could document it. I could prepare. And I could wait for the moment when my daughter would finally be ready to hear the truth. That moment came sooner than I expected, but not soon enough to prevent the damage. That night, I made my decision. I would buy a journal. I would begin writing down everything I observed, and I would keep that record safe until the day Olivia needed it. January 2023. Derek is now my son-in-law, and I'm beginning to see patterns. I purchased the leather journal in December right after the wedding. It's 800 pages bound in brown leather with my initials embossed on the cover. I chose it deliberately, something substantial, something that would feel permanent. Something that would bear the weight of what I'm about to document. The first entry is dated January 3rd, 2023. I sit alone in my home office late at night and begin to write. Derek is now my son-in-law, and I'm beginning to see patterns. That's how I start. No preamble, no explanation. Just observation. The clinical voice of a financial advisor trained to see patterns, to identify risk, to document details with precision. I begin documenting everything. The way Derek insists on having access to Olivia's phone. The way he questions every purchase she makes, every coffee with a coworker, every dollar spent. The way he controls her schedule, wanting to know where she is at all times, who she's with when she'll be home. I write it down, the dates, the times, the exact words that were spoken. Week 1 of January, Derek demands Olivia tell him her email password. She resists at first, but he tells her it's about security, about protecting their finances, about making sure no one steals their identities. She gives it to him. I note the date, January 7th, 2023. Time, 9:47 p.m. His exact words, "If you trust me, you'll give it to me." Week 2. Derek tells Olivia she can't see Paul anymore. Not in a controlling way exactly. He frames it as concern. "I just worry that he has too much influence over you. He's always trying to come between us," he tells her. Olivia argues at first, but by the end of the conversation, she's apologizing to Derek for making him feel insecure. I write isolation protocol beginning, subject resisting but yielding. Week 3. Derek opens a joint bank account and deposits Olivia's entire salary into it. He's the one who controls the card. He gives her an allowance. An allowance. For a woman who earns her own money as a marketing professional, making $60,000 annually. I note the monthly amount, $2,000. Everything else is his to manage, invest, control. Each entry in my journal is detailed, time-stamped, analytical. I'm not writing as a father overcome with emotion. I'm writing as a witness, building a case, because somewhere deep in my gut, I know this is going to matter. I know that someday someone is going to need this record. Someone is going to need proof that what happened wasn't her imagination, that it was real, that it was documented. By mid-January, I filled 30 pages. The pattern is already clear. This is not improvisation. This is a calculated strategy. Week 4. I notice Olivia wearing long sleeves in the middle of winter when we're at a restaurant. When I ask her about it casually, she becomes evasive. "I'm just cold," she says, but her eyes don't meet mine. I make a note. I don't know what it means yet, but I know it matters. I know I need to watch this space carefully. By the end of January, the pattern is unmistakable. Derek isn't just a controlling boyfriend. He's methodical. He's strategic. He's isolating Olivia piece by piece, making her dependent on him, financially and emotionally, while convincing her that it's all for her own good. He's remaking her into something smaller, something that needs him. I continue writing. Every week, new entries. Every observation documented. Every conversation between Derek and Olivia that I witness, recorded with clinical precision. I'm building an archive of behavior. I'm creating a map of escalation. The model is becoming clear. Derek uses 3 mechanisms of control simultaneously. Emotional isolation, cutting her off from friends and family. Financial control, managing all her money, giving her an allowance. And psychological manipulation, making her doubt her own judgment, her own perceptions, her own worth. Olivia doesn't see it yet. She's been trained by Derek to interpret his controlling behavior as love. When he checks her phone, it's because he cares about their relationship. When he controls her money, it's because he wants to protect their future and consolidate their finances. When he isolates her from Paul and other friends, it's because he's jealous. And jealousy in his narrative is proof of love. Deep love, but I see it. And I write it down. Through February and March, the entries accumulate. By April, I've documented enough behavior to recognize a deliberate pattern. Derek is moving through phases with precision, first emotional isolation, then financial control, then I suspect, with growing dread, something worse. I fill the pages methodically. Date. Time. What happened? What was said? How Olivia reacted? How Derek responded? Each entry builds on the last, creating a timeline of escalation that is undeniable. Every night I add to the journal. Every conversation I overhear, every change I notice in Olivia, every lie I catch. Derek and it all goes into the pages. 800 pages waiting to be filled. I don't know yet what I'm building, but I know with absolute certainty that I'm building something important. Something that will matter. Something that will eventually protect my daughter when everything falls apart. I create headings within the journal, timeline of isolation. Financial control mechanisms, psychological manipulation tactics. I organize the chaos into structure. I turn observation into evidence. I become both witness and architect of documentation. Months pass. The entries continue. January becomes February. February becomes March. March becomes April. And with each passing month, my conviction grows stronger. I am not documenting a love story. I am documenting a predator at work. That was when I realized Derek was not acting alone. I remember the exact moment Olivia told me about her. We were having lunch, just the two of us, something we tried to do whenever we could manage it, and Olivia said, "Dad, I made a new friend. Her name is Rebecca. She's really nice. I think you'd like her." I didn't think much of it at first. Olivia needed friends. Derek had systematically isolated her from the people she used to spend time with, and I was actually relieved to hear that she might be rebuilding some social connections. So I said something encouraging. I said I was happy she'd made a friend. Rebecca Hayes was 27 years old. She worked as a model, high-end fashion mostly. She had the kind of beauty that was almost intimidating. Dark hair, perfect skin, a body that suggested she spent significant time at the gym or had very good genetics. She dressed well. She had money, or at least appeared to. She wore designer clothes, nice jewelry, the kind of polish that comes from either family money or success in her field. But the thing that struck me most about Rebecca wasn't her appearance. It was her manner. She had this way of making people feel like they were the most important person in the room. When she talked to you, she made eye contact. She asked questions. She listened to your answers. She remembered details you'd mentioned in passing. She had the skill set of someone who'd learned how to manipulate people by making them feel valued. I learned all this from my daughter's accounts of their meetings. Olivia had met Rebecca at a party thrown by one of Olivia's co-workers. They'd struck up a conversation, just random, Olivia said. Rebecca was standing alone, and Olivia had approached her. They'd talked for an hour. They'd exchanged numbers. And from that moment on, Rebecca had slowly but deliberately worked her way into Olivia's life. At first it was coffee. Rebecca texted Olivia suggesting they grab coffee sometime. Then they did. Olivia came home from that coffee date and told me all about it. Rebecca was funny, she said. Rebecca asked great questions. Rebecca seemed genuinely interested in knowing about Olivia's life. Then it was shopping. Rebecca knew a good boutique downtown. Rebecca thought Olivia had great style and suggested they go together. Then they did. Then Rebecca started making suggestions about what Olivia should wear. Rebecca said certain outfits would look better on her. Rebecca suggested they go to a gym together. Rebecca was a fitness influencer on social media, Olivia mentioned. Rebecca had a lot of followers. Each individual meeting seemed innocent. Each text message seemed friendly. But when I documented them in my journal, and I was documenting everything, now everything about Rebecca, a pattern emerged that matched the one I'd seen with Derek. Rebecca was always asking questions, not in an obvious way. Not like she was interrogating Olivia. But questions were threaded through every conversation. Questions about Olivia's family. Questions about her childhood. questions about her finances, questions about her relationship with Derek, questions about whether she was happy. And each time Rebecca asked a question, she positioned herself as a confidant. She'd share something personal about herself in return. She'd make Olivia feel like they were bonding, like Rebecca was the kind of friend who really understood her. But here was what struck me, and what I wrote down in my journal. Rebecca never seemed surprised by anything Olivia told her. When Olivia mentioned that Derek didn't like her wearing certain clothes, Rebecca nodded like she'd expected to hear that. When Olivia said that Derek wanted to know where she was at all times, Rebecca responded with something like, "Yeah, my ex was like that too." She positioned herself as someone who understood controlling behavior, and in doing so, she normalized it for Olivia. She was grooming my daughter. That's what I realized sitting in my study one evening in mid-April, filling pages in my journal with observations about Rebecca. Rebecca wasn't just a friend. Rebecca was doing something deliberate, something strategic, something that meshed perfectly with what Derek was already doing. But I didn't know why yet. I'd watched the way Rebecca looked at Derek when the three of them were together, and Derek looked back. There was a recognition between them, an understanding, a connection that went beyond polite acquaintance. I'd seen that look before. It was the look of people who shared a secret, of people who were in on something together. One evening in late April, Derek came home and Rebecca was there. She was supposed to be having a girls' night with Olivia, but somehow Derek had ended up joining them. The three of them were on the couch watching a movie, and I watched from the kitchen pretending to make tea as Rebecca and Derek exchanged glances when Olivia was looking at her phone. Quick glances, the kind you wouldn't notice if you weren't paying attention. I was paying attention. I went back to my study and I wrote it down. Every detail, the timing, the glances, the way Rebecca's hand had briefly rested on Olivia's arm, possessive almost. The way Derek had smiled when he looked at both of them, like he was enjoying some kind of private joke. The next day, I made a decision. I started a second page in my journal. A page just for Rebecca. A page dedicated to documenting her movements, her words, her questions, her interactions with Derek, everything. Because I knew with absolute certainty now that Rebecca was part of something. She was connected to Derek in a way that wasn't accidental. But what was her role exactly? What was she doing? What was the end game? I didn't know yet, but I was going to find out. I remember it was a Tuesday afternoon. I was at my office going over some client portfolios when my phone rang. Paul Anderson's name came up on the screen. Paul and I had been friends for 33 years. 33. We'd met in our early 30s working at the same firm back then. We'd built our careers in parallel. We'd watched each other get married, get divorced, raise kids, experience all the things that a lifetime of friendship encompasses. Paul had been there when Dorothy was sick. He'd been there when she died. He'd been there for Olivia, showing up to every birthday, every graduation, every important moment of her life. He was like an uncle to her. I answered the phone. "Hey, Paul, what's up?" His voice was different, tight, worried. "Tom," he said, "I need to talk to you about Olivia." My stomach dropped. "What's wrong? Is she okay? Is she hurt?" No, Paul said quickly. "She's not hurt. But something's wrong. I don't know what, but something is wrong." Paul told me that he hadn't heard from Olivia in about 3 weeks. 3 weeks. In the years since Dorothy died, Olivia and Paul had a standing coffee date every other week. They talked on the phone. They texted. They had a real relationship. But 3 weeks ago, things had changed. Paul had tried to call Olivia to set up their coffee date. She'd declined. She said she was busy. When he tried again, a few days later, she didn't answer. When he texted her, his messages went unanswered for hours, sometimes days. "It's like she's avoiding me," Paul said. "And I don't know why. Did I do something? Did I say something?" I didn't know how to answer him. Because I knew exactly what was happening. I'd been documenting it. I'd filled pages in my journal tracking this exact pattern. But I couldn't tell Paul that his goddaughter was being systematically isolated from him by a woman masquerading as her friend. "Let me talk to her," I said. "I'll find out what's going on." But when I tried to talk to Olivia, I got the same thing Paul was getting. Vague responses, excuses, avoidance. And when I gently suggested that she spend time with Paul, she got defensive. "Why does everyone keep pushing me to do things I don't want to do?" she asked. There was an edge to her voice I'd never heard before. "Nobody's pushing you," I said carefully. "Paul just misses you. He's worried." "Paul doesn't trust me," Olivia said. "He thinks I need to be watched. He thinks I can't make my own decisions." That's when I knew. That's when I understood exactly what Rebecca had been doing. Rebecca had been telling Olivia that Paul was controlling. Rebecca had been framing Paul's concern as possessiveness. Rebecca had been poisoning my daughter's mind against a man who loved her like a father. I started noticing the pattern everywhere after that conversation with Paul. I'd mention something about Paul to Olivia, and she'd respond with skepticism. Paul said that, why would Paul say that? Like everything he did was suspect, like his motives were automatically in question. One day, Olivia mentioned casually that Rebecca had told her something Paul had said years ago, something that Rebecca claimed showed Paul's true controlling nature. Except I knew Paul. I knew that story. And Rebecca had either completely fabricated it or twisted it beyond recognition to make Paul look bad. I wrote that down in my journal. I wrote down the date, the story, what Rebecca had claimed, what the truth actually was. But it didn't stop there. The same thing started happening with me. Olivia began making excuses not to come to our weekly lunches. She said she was tired. She said she had plans with Rebecca. She said she needed space. When I'd suggest we do something together, she'd respond with irritation like I was being unreasonable, like I didn't respect her independence. "You're always trying to control my life," she said to me one day. I was suggesting we go to dinner, nothing more. But she said it like I'd demanded she move back home. I realized then that Rebecca had been doing the same thing to me that she'd been doing to Paul. She'd been positioning me as a controlling father. She'd been suggesting to Olivia that my concern was actually possessiveness. She'd been reframing love as control. And Olivia was believing her. I watched my daughter pull away from the two people who loved her most. I watched her become more dependent on Rebecca and Derek. I watched the walls go up between us. And I wrote it all down. Every conversation, every excuse, every instance of avoidance. Every moment when she repeated something, Rebecca had said something that positioned me or Paul as the bad guys. The maddening thing was that I couldn't say anything. I couldn't tell Olivia that Rebecca was manipulating her, because doing so would just confirm what Rebecca had already told her, that I was trying to control her perceptions, that I didn't trust her judgment. Rebecca had trapped us all in a perfect cage. One night in late May, I was in my study when Derek and Rebecca came over. They were there with Olivia. They'd been watching a movie and I'd heard their laughter from the other room. But I'd stayed in my study giving them space because I'd learned that my presence made Olivia uncomfortable these days. I heard Rebecca say something to Olivia. I couldn't quite make out the words, but then Olivia laughed. That was the sound that broke me. That was my daughter laughing with the woman who was systematically cutting her off from everyone who loved her. I opened my journal, and I wrote a new heading, Rebecca's Strategy. And under that, I began documenting everything. Not just observations, but analysis. How Rebecca was positioning herself as the only trustworthy person in Olivia's life. How she was making my daughter dependent on her validation. How she was creating an us versus them dynamic. How she was in every measurable way engaging in psychological manipulation. And then I wrote something else, and Rebecca had moved even deeper. Because I didn't know it yet, but Rebecca wasn't just isolating Olivia from us. She was preparing her for something. She was softening her up. She was making her vulnerable to the next phase of Derek's plan. I just didn't know what that phase was yet. Looking back now, I can see how perfectly calculated everything was. Derek had isolated Olivia from her support system. He'd positioned himself and Rebecca as the only people she could trust, and now he was ready for the next part of the plan. He was going to take control of her finances. It started subtly. Derek suggested that they combine their finances. It was practical, he said. It was what married couples did. It was more efficient to have one account instead of two. He said it as if it was just common sense. Like any reasonable person would understand that two people in love should share everything, including their money. Olivia agreed. I didn't know about it at first. She just mentioned casually one day that she and Derek had opened a joint account. She said she'd be depositing her paycheck into it now. She said Derek handled the bills and the household expenses, so it made sense for him to manage the account. She said it the way someone says something they've been told to say, like she was repeating words that someone else had given her. What she didn't mention, because she probably didn't realize, was that Derek had also set up a secondary account, one that was technically joint, but where Olivia's access was limited. He had the primary access. He had the debit cards. He had the ability to see every transaction. But Olivia could ask for money when she needed it. That's a generous way of describing financial abuse. The real test came in late June, when Derek decided they needed a new house. The apartment they were living in wasn't good enough anymore. He wanted something bigger, more expensive, something that reflected his status. He told Olivia about it like it was already decided, like her opinion didn't matter. Your father has money, Derek said to Olivia one evening. I wasn't there, but she told me about this conversation later. Told me while we were having coffee, told me with a kind of helplessness that broke my heart. Your father could help us with a down payment. Derek, no, Olivia said. I'm not asking my dad for money. That's not happening. According to Olivia, Derek got quiet. Not angry in an explosive way, but quiet in a way that was somehow worse. He stopped talking to her. He stopped touching her. He went into a kind of withdrawal that made Olivia feel like she'd done something terrible. Like she'd disappointed him. Like she'd failed him by not being willing to ask her own father for money. She lasted 3 days. On the 3rd day, Olivia called me. She asked if we could meet. Her voice was small, fragile, like she'd been crying. We met at a coffee shop downtown. Olivia ordered a coffee but didn't drink it. She just held the cup, staring into it like the answers to the universe were at the bottom. Dash, she said, I need to ask you something. I knew what was coming. I'd already documented it in my journal. I knew this conversation was coming because it followed a predictable pattern. Derek had isolated her, made her dependent on him for emotional validation, and now he was making her dependent on him for financial control. And when she resisted, when she tried to maintain even a small boundary, he withdrew. He made her feel guilty. He made her feel like she'd failed. And Derek wants to buy a house, Olivia said. And he thinks maybe you could help with the down payment. I looked at my daughter. I looked at her face. I looked at the shame there, the embarrassment, the way she couldn't meet my eyes. No, I said gently. Olivia, I love you, but the answer is no. Her face fell. Dad, please. He really wants. I know what Derek wants, I said. But I'm not going to enable this. Olivia's eyes filled with tears. You don't understand. You don't know what it's like. You're always against me. You're always trying to control me. There it was. Rebecca's words coming out of my daughter's mouth. Rebecca had positioned me as the villain in this story. Rebecca had told Olivia that my refusal to fund Derek's lifestyle was actually proof that I didn't support her, that I was trying to control her. I didn't give Derek the money. I didn't waver. But I also watched my daughter leave that coffee shop, heartbroken, convinced that her father didn't understand her marriage, didn't support her happiness, and wasn't there for her when she needed him. That was the cruelest part. That was when I truly understood what Rebecca and Derek had accomplished. Back in my study that night, I opened my journal and I wrote a new heading, The 3 Pillars of Control. The first pillar was emotional. Derek had isolated Olivia from everyone who loved her. He'd positioned himself as the only person whose love and validation mattered. He'd done this through Rebecca, through manipulation, through carefully constructed doubt. The second pillar was financial. Derek had positioned himself as the keeper of Olivia's money. He'd made her dependent on him for every dollar she spent. He'd created a situation where she couldn't leave, couldn't support herself, couldn't escape. The third pillar was informational. This was where Rebecca came in. Rebecca was documenting everything. Not just the big things, the fights, the isolation, the financial control, but the small things too. Every conversation Olivia had with her friends. Every text message Olivia sent to Thomas. Every private thought Olivia shared with Rebecca, thinking she was confiding in a trusted friend. Rebecca was gathering ammunition. She was building a case. She was creating a record that Derek could weaponize against Olivia later. And the 3 pillars worked together. They reinforced each other. They created a system where Olivia couldn't escape emotionally because she was isolated. She couldn't escape financially because she had no money. And she couldn't escape informationally because every move she made was being documented and reported back to Derek. It was a perfect trap. I filled pages that night documenting all of this. I analyzed the system. I broke down how it worked. I predicted what would come next. Because I'd been in finance for 35 years, I understood systems. I understood how to build something that appeared to be stable but was actually designed to trap someone inside it. Derek and Rebecca had built that system around my daughter, but Rebecca was doing something else too. She wasn't just documenting for Derek's benefit. She was gathering evidence. She was creating a record. And I didn't understand yet why. I didn't understand what she planned to do with all those documented conversations, all those private moments, all those things that Olivia had shared with her so-called friend. I just knew that Rebecca was collecting something. But Rebecca was gathering evidence in a different way. Olivia showed up at my house on a Tuesday afternoon. She said she was in the neighborhood, had some free time, wondered if I wanted to grab lunch. That was unusual. Olivia didn't just drop by anymore. She made plans through Derek. She coordinated with Rebecca. She didn't do spontaneous anymore. So when she arrived, I was immediately on alert. She was wearing a long-sleeved shirt. In July, in Chicago. It was hot that day, I remember. It was the kind of heat that makes you sweat just walking to your car. And Olivia was wearing a long-sleeved shirt. I didn't say anything at first. We made small talk. I asked about work. I asked about Derek. I asked how things were going. She gave me generic answers. Everything was fine. Derek was fine. Work was fine. Fine, fine, fine. But her eyes kept looking away from mine. We made lunch. I suggested we eat on the back porch where there was some shade. We sat down with sandwiches and lemonade, and I was watching her. I was watching the way she held her glass, the way she moved her left arm. That's when I saw it. She reached for her glass, and her sleeve rode up slightly. Just enough. Just for a second. But I saw it. A bruise on her forearm, dark purple, fading to yellowish green at the edges. The kind of bruise that takes time to develop. The kind of bruise that was several days old. And it had a shape. It had the distinct outline of fingers, of someone's hand wrapped around her arm, gripping tightly. My stomach dropped. "Olivia," I said carefully, "what happened to your arm?" She pulled her sleeve down immediately, like she'd been burned. She laughed a tight, nervous laugh that didn't sound like my daughter at all. "Oh, that," she said. "I fell. I was doing yoga and I lost my balance and I fell onto the couch. Caught it on the armrest." The story came out too quickly, too rehearsed, like she'd practiced it, like she'd been waiting for someone to ask. I didn't push. I knew better. If I pushed, she'd get defensive. If I questioned her, she'd defend Derek. If I suggested that the bruise looked like something other than what she'd described, she'd claim I was being controlling, that I didn't trust her, that I was trying to manipulate her perception of reality. I'd learned this already. Rebecca had taught her well. So I finished my lunch. I talked about other things. I let her relax. And when she went to the bathroom, I took my phone, and I took a photo of where she'd been sitting, where I could see her arm in the light. And not a clear photo, I wasn't trying to make it obvious, but enough. Enough to document what I'd seen. That night I opened my journal. I drew a small diagram of an arm. I marked the location of the bruise. Forearm about halfway between wrist and elbow. On the underside where it would be hidden by a long sleeve or a watch. I wrote down the date, July 14th, 2024. I wrote down the time, approximately 1:15 p.m. I wrote down the color, dark purple with yellowish edges. I wrote down the shape, finger marks consistent with a grip. I wrote, pattern suggests forceful restraint. Hand position indicates someone gripping from outside, pulling inward. Size of fingers suggests adult male, approximately Derek's hand size. I was being clinical about it. I was being precise. Because I knew that someday this information might matter. Someday someone might need to know exactly what I'd observed and when I'd observed it. Then I added a second page. I pasted the photograph I'd taken into my journal. I dated it. I labeled it. I wrote down the circumstances. I wrote down what Olivia had said about how she got the bruise. I wrote down my assessment, that her explanation was inconsistent with the physical evidence. I was building a case. I didn't know against whom yet, but I was building a case. Because that's what you do when you're a father, and your daughter shows up at your house with bruises that look like someone's hands. That's what you do when you're trained to analyze systems, and you realize you're watching a system of abuse unfold in real time. You document. You preserve evidence. You prepare. What I didn't do, what I couldn't do, was ask Derek directly. I couldn't confront him. Because if I did, he'd deny it. He'd turn it around on me. He'd make it my fault somehow. And worst of all, it would get back to Olivia. And Rebecca would use it as evidence that I was trying to control her, that I was trying to turn her against her husband, that I was the problem in her marriage. So I waited. I documented. And I sat with the terrible knowledge that my daughter was being hurt by the man she'd married, and I couldn't stop it. Not yet. But what I could do was pay attention. What I could do was grip the details of what was happening and hold them close. Because I understood something that Derek probably didn't understand, something that Rebecca definitely didn't understand. Patterns escalate. Violence doesn't stay the same. It builds. It intensifies. It progresses from one form to another, from psychological to financial to physical. And once the line between physical and other forms of abuse had been crossed, once Derek had put his hands on Olivia in anger, it would keep happening. It would keep getting worse. I realized Derek was escalating his level of danger. I started noticing things about Rebecca's notebook in the middle of August. It was small, the size of a pocket journal, leather-bound like mine, but without the weight or substance. It fit easily into her designer handbag. And I noticed that Rebecca was constantly writing in it. At first, I thought it was nothing. Maybe she was sketching. Maybe she was making notes about her modeling career. Maybe she kept a journal like I did, documenting her own life for her own reasons. But then I started paying attention to when Rebecca was writing. She wrote during coffee dates with Olivia. She wrote after conversations with Olivia. She wrote immediately after Olivia showed her something on her phone. She wrote while Olivia was in the bathroom. I documented this in my own journal. I wrote down dates and times. I wrote down what I observed. What I eventually understood was that Rebecca was recording conversations. She was documenting Olivia's words, her feelings, her private thoughts, and she was doing it systematically. I found this out through a conversation with Olivia that happened by accident. Olivia came to my house one afternoon, and she was upset about something Rebecca had told her. Apparently, Rebecca had mentioned that Olivia had said something negative about Derek during one of their coffee dates. Except Olivia hadn't said that. She was sure she hadn't said that, and she was confused and hurt that Rebecca would claim she'd said something she didn't remember saying. Olivia was describing this to me, trying to understand it, and suddenly I understood. Rebecca wasn't misremembering. Rebecca was misquoting. Rebecca was taking things Olivia said and twisting them, or recording them, or interpreting them in ways that served Derek's agenda. I asked Olivia if Rebecca took notes during their conversations. Olivia said no. She said Rebecca always had her phone out, but she used it for texting and social media. She didn't take notes, but she did. She was taking notes. I was certain of it. The real breakthrough came in late August when Paul called me again. He said he'd run into Olivia at a coffee shop, and she'd stopped to say hello, and during the conversation, her phone had been on the table between them. Rebecca had apparently texted Olivia something, and when Olivia looked at her phone, Paul had caught a glimpse of the conversation history. There were screenshots, Paul said. Screenshots of conversations between you and Olivia, between me and Olivia. Screenshots of things Olivia said to Rebecca about Derek. It looked like Rebecca had compiled them into some kind of document. My blood ran cold. I started watching Rebecca more carefully after that. I started documenting not just what Rebecca did, but how she did it. And what I realized was that Rebecca had a system. Whenever Olivia went to the bathroom or stepped away from the room, Rebecca would take Olivia's phone if she could. She'd open it. Apparently Olivia had given her the passcode, or Derek had, or she'd figured it out, and she'd take screenshots. She'd photograph conversations. She'd document whatever she could access. Then she'd write it all down in her notebook. And then she'd report it all to Derek. I saw this happen at a dinner at Olivia and Derek's apartment. I was there. Derek had invited me, probably as a show of normalcy, or maybe to spy on me. Olivia excused herself to use the bathroom. Rebecca immediately picked up Olivia's phone. She opened it. She scrolled through something. She used her own phone to photograph whatever was on Olivia's screen. All of this took maybe 90 seconds. Then she put Olivia's phone back down. She pulled out her notebook. She wrote something. All the while, Derek was watching from across the room, and the two of them exchanged a look. A quick glance, an acknowledgement, a confirmation that the plan was working. That's when I knew. That's when I understood that this wasn't just Derek being a controlling husband with a friend who enabled him. This was coordinated. This was strategic. This was a two-person operation designed to systematically isolate control and document everything about my daughter's life. Rebecca wasn't Olivia's friend. She was Derek's accomplice. She was gathering evidence. She was creating a record. She was building an archive of Olivia's private thoughts, private conversations, private moments. And I still didn't fully understand why. But I knew it was for a reason. I knew Rebecca wasn't documenting Olivia's life out of boredom or out of casual malice. There was a purpose to this. There was an endgame. There was something that Derek and Rebecca were building toward. That night after I got home, I opened my journal, and I added a new section. I titled it Rebecca's Arsenal, and under that I began documenting everything I'd witnessed. What Rebecca was taking, how she was taking it, when she was taking it, what she was writing down, the communication between Derek and Rebecca, the coordination of their efforts. Because if Rebecca was building an arsenal of information about my daughter, then I was going to build an arsenal of information about Rebecca. I started writing down everything. I documented her phone calls. I documented her comings and goings. I documented the notebook. I documented the screenshots. I documented the glances between her and Derek. I was documenting everything because I knew with absolute certainty now that someday all of this would matter. Someday Olivia would need to know what had been done to her. Someday Someone would need to understand the full scope of what Rebecca and Derek had orchestrated. Rebecca had been filling pages with Olivia's private conversations. If you're still here, comment, "I'm still watching, so I know you're with me up to this point." And if you were in my position, when you realized everything had been planned, documented, and prepared for a dangerous purpose, would you stay silent? Or would you act immediately? And just so you know, the next part of this story includes some dramatized elements for storytelling and educational purposes. If you'd rather not continue, you're free to stop watching here. My phone rang on a Tuesday afternoon. Paul's name came up on the screen. Paul didn't call me often anymore. Nobody did. People tend to keep their distance when they sense something dark is happening in your family. But Paul wasn't like that. Paul had been calling me regularly for months, ever since Olivia had started pulling away from him. He'd been checking in, asking how I was doing, never pushing, just being there in the quiet way that only true friends know how to be. But this call was different. I could hear it in the way he said my name. "Tom," Paul said. "I need to tell you something. It's about Derek." I knew immediately that something had shifted. Something had changed. There was an urgency in Paul's voice that I'd never heard before. "I've been watching him," Paul said. Then he paused like he was deciding whether to continue. "I know that sounds strange, but I've been worried about Olivia, and I've been watching Derek." I didn't ask him why. I didn't question his methods. I just listened. Paul told me that he'd been noticing patterns. Derek leaving the apartment at unusual hours. Derek meeting with people who looked uncomfortable. People who didn't seem like Derek's normal social circle. Paul, who was 6 years older than me and had spent his career in insurance fraud investigation before he retired, had developed good instincts about when something wasn't right. So he decided to follow Derek. Last week, Paul had tracked Derek to a hardware store on the north side of Chicago. A specific kind of hardware store, the kind that sells professional-grade equipment. The kind that contractors use. The kind that regular people don't usually need. Derek had gone straight to a section in the back. He'd picked up a pair of bolt cutters. Heavy ones. Then he'd moved to another section. He'd grabbed a length of rope. Industrial rope. The kind designed to withstand significant tension. Then he'd gone to another aisle. He'd selected a piece of metal piping steel approximately 2 feet in length. Paul watched him buy these items with cash. No credit card, no record, just cash. "Tom," Paul said. "These are not things someone buys to fix a house." I didn't say anything. I couldn't say anything. My mind was racing, my hands were shaking. Paul continued. He'd followed Derek out of the store. He'd watched Derek load the items into his car. Then Paul had made a decision. He'd decided to follow Derek home. Derek drove to the apartment he shared with Olivia. He parked. He got out of the car. And Paul, sitting in his own car 3 spaces away, watched Derek carry those items, the bolt cutters, the rope, the steel pipe, into the building. Into the place where my daughter was living. "Paul," I said. My voice was barely a whisper. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to know," Paul said. And then his voice changed. It became harder, more urgent, more afraid. "Tom, I saw him buying things. Buying tools. Bad tools. He's going to hurt her. Or worse." The words hung in the air between us. Or worse. Worse than hurt. Worse than abuse. Worse than everything that had already happened. I understood immediately what Paul was saying. I understood what those tools meant. I understood the implication. Derek had a plan. It wasn't just about control anymore. It wasn't just about isolation and financial manipulation and psychological abuse. Derek had escalated beyond that. Derek had moved into a different territory entirely. Derek had moved into the territory of someone who was running out of time, running out of options, and was willing to do something irreversible. I hung up the phone with Paul. I sat at my desk. And I didn't move. I didn't write anything in my journal. I didn't make any phone calls. I just sat there in the dark, understanding with absolute clarity that I had reached the end of something. The end of waiting. The end of documenting. The end of hoping that things would resolve themselves, or that Olivia would leave on her own, or that the situation would somehow improve without intervention. The time for passive observation was over. 2 years. I had been writing in that journal for 2 years. 2 years of documenting patterns. 2 years of recording abuse. 2 years was enough. For the first time in those 2 years, I knew I could not wait any longer. Not another hour. Not another minute. Not another second. Something was about to happen. Something that couldn't be undone. Something that couldn't be recovered from. And I was the only person who could stop it. I had to act now. Detective Rob Morgan sits across from me in a small room at the police station, a cup of cold coffee between us. It's November 2024, and we're planning what might be our only real chance to stop Derek before he tries something worse. He tracks her phone, I tell Morgan. Every minute of every day. She can't go anywhere without him knowing her location. Morgan nods. He's heard this before from other cases. We use that against him, he says simply. The plan is elegant in its simplicity. We bait the trap, and Derek walks right into it. I call Olivia that evening. She comes to my house and we sit at the kitchen table while I explain what we're going to do. Her hands shake as she listens. Dad, what if he won't have time to do anything, I promise. The police will be there. You'll be safe. 2 days later, Olivia texts Derek. Going to First National Bank downtown. Need to check on something about Mom's accounts. Derek's response is immediate. Within minutes, I know he's tracking her location on his phone. He's probably already planning what he'll do when he gets there. Olivia and I arrive at the bank at 2:15 p.m. on a Thursday. Charlie Murphy, the bank manager, is expecting us. He's already informed security about what's going to happen. Detective Morgan and 3 uniformed officers are positioned inside the bank. 2 near the main entrance, 1 near the security office. Morgan himself stationed near the safe deposit box area where we'll be. We walk to the vault. Charlie opens box 247. Inside it, the journal, the photographs, the documents. All of it. Proof of everything. We're there for exactly 4 minutes. That's when Derek arrives. I hear the bank doors open. I hear his voice, frantic, angry, confused. Where's my wife? Where is she? The bank clerk at the front desk tries to help him calmly. Sir, can I need to see my wife. Now, she's here. I know she's here. Derek's voice is escalating. I can hear him from where I'm standing in the vault room with Olivia. Stay here, I whisper to Olivia, positioning myself between her and the doorway. Derek appears in the hallway leading to the vault. His eyes are wild. He's holding something in his right hand, the bolt cutters heavy and menacing, the blades glinting under the fluorescent lights. Tom, he shouts. What the hell are you doing? Are you stealing from me? Is that it? Are you... He sees the safe deposit box still open, still filled with evidence of his crimes. Something breaks inside Derek in that moment. I watch it happen. The facade shatters. The calculated charm disappears. What's left is raw rage and desperation. He lunges toward the restricted area, raising the bolt cutters, moving toward Olivia and me. That's when Detective Morgan steps forward. Derek Hayes, you need to stop right now. Derek spins around, and for a moment, I think he might actually use those bolt cutters on Morgan. But there are 3 uniformed officers now, hands on their weapons, positioned around him. Derek Hayes, you're under arrest for unlawful entry into a restricted area of a financial institution and for threats of violence. Derek fights them. He screams obscenities. He claims he's just a concerned husband. But as they restrain him, as they force his hands behind his back and secure the handcuffs, the bolt cutters fall to the floor. One of the officers picks them up, carefully places them in an evidence bag. Search his vehicle, Morgan instructs. 30 minutes later, officers return with more bags. Inside the trunk of Derek's car, the industrial rope, the steel pipe, gloves, a flashlight. Implements clearly designed for something far worse than what he attempted at the bank. We're adding charges, Morgan tells me quietly. Possession of dangerous tools with intent to cause harm. Conspiracy. We've got him now, Mr. Richardson. He's not getting out this time. Derek is taken away in a police car. I watch him go, his face pressed against the window, his mouth still moving, still denying, still lying. Olivia steps out of the vault. She's pale, shaking, but alive. Alive and safe. Is it over? She asks me. The first part, I say. Now comes the rest. The phone feels heavy in my hand as I dial Olivia's number. It's December 14th, 2024, 1 month after Derek's arrest at the bank. Dad! Her voice is tentative. I need you to come home, please. My voice cracks slightly. She hears it. She understands. 20 minutes later, she's packing a bag. I don't go to pick her up alone. After the call about the tools, the rope, and steel pipe found in Derek's car, I needed backup. I called Paul immediately. He was at my house within an hour. She needs protection, I told him. We're going to the bank. We're going to open that safe deposit box. Everything Dorothy left for her. Paul didn't hesitate. I'm coming with you. Olivia is my daughter too in every way that matters. Paul has been a godfather to Olivia since she was a child. He's been the uncle at recitals, the friend who called to check on her, the man who never stopped believing something was wrong with Derek. Now he wanted to be there for the moment everything changed. When Olivia arrives at my house, she looks fragile and terrified. She doesn't know about the safe deposit box yet. She only knows that her father called with urgency. Paul is waiting in the living room. When she sees him, something breaks open inside her. She cries, really cries in Paul's arms like she hasn't cried in months. It's going to be okay. Paul tells her, his voice steady. I promise you, sweetheart, it's going to be okay. We drive to First National Bank downtown. The December afternoon is cold and gray. Paul sits in front with me. Olivia sits in back. Her hands folded, preparing herself for something she doesn't understand yet. At the bank, Charlie Murphy, the bank manager, greets us warmly. He remembers us from Derek's arrest. I have the box ready for you, he says, leading us toward the vault area. But before we go further, I reach into my pocket and pull out a key. It's worn from 15 years of handling. Dorothy handed it to me in a hospital room when she was still strong enough to grip my hand with purpose. This key, I tell Olivia, is one of only 2 that exists for that safe deposit box. The bank makes no copies. There are no duplicates, just 2. Your mother gave me this one 15 years ago, and she made me promise something. Olivia watches the key like it holds the secrets of the universe. And she told me I should guard this key like I was guarding my own life. I continue. She said I must keep it safe, hidden, protected from anyone who might use it wrongly. And she made me swear before God, that I would only give it to you when you were truly free, when you were no longer bound by anyone's control, when you could make your own choices without fear or manipulation. Paul's hand tightens on Olivia's shoulder. He understands what this moment represents. He understands that Dorothy, even dying, found a way to protect her daughter across time itself. For 15 years, I say, I've carried this key. I've kept it secret from everyone. I've hidden it in places only I knew about. I've waited for this day when you would be ready to use it, when you would be strong enough to open it and see what your mother left for you. When you would understand that real love means protection, not possession. I extend the key toward Olivia. Her hands tremble as she takes it. The metal is warm from being in my pocket, warm from 15 years of being held close to my heart. This is your mother's love, I tell her. This is her reaching across 15 years to say I see you. I protect you. I believe in your strength. You matter. Your freedom matters. You deserve safety and dignity and the right to choose your own life without anyone's interference. Charlie gestures respectfully toward the vault. Whenever you're ready, he says, giving us privacy. Paul doesn't follow us into the vault room. That's a private moment for Olivia and me. But he waits in the hallway just outside, close enough that Olivia can hear his voice if she needs him. Inside the vault, Olivia's hand shakes as she slides the key into the lock. I watch her, this girl who's been through so much, who's finally at the threshold of understanding that she was never alone. Her mother was with her all along in legal documents and financial safeguards, and a key kept safe by a father who refused to abandon his duty. She turns the key. The lock opens. The safe deposit box slides open, revealing everything Dorothy left for her protection. The leather journal sits on top. The photographs. The documents. Dorothy's letter in its cream-colored envelope for Olivia. When you need me most. Your mother left this for you. I tell her, my own voice breaking. All of it. Because she loved you. Because even when she was dying, she thought about your future. She built walls of protection around you, legal, financial, and emotional, through this letter. Olivia opens Dorothy's letter. She reads the words her mother wrote 15 years ago, words that somehow knew the future. I watch her face as understanding floods in, as she realizes that her mother anticipated danger and built protection before Olivia ever met Derek. The tears come. I hold her while she cries, while she processes everything Dorothy tried to tell her across the years. While she finally understands that people who love you don't control you, they protect you, and then they let you go. When we emerge from the vault, Paul is there. He's been standing guard, making sure nothing disturbs this moment. He takes one look at Olivia's face and knows. The girl who walked in is not the same girl coming out. Okay, he asks gently. Olivia nods. She's holding the key. Dorothy's key. The symbol of her mother's love and her own hard-won freedom. We drive home in silence. Chicago passes by outside the windows, cold and beautiful and indifferent. But inside this car, three people understand something profound, that real love protects without controlling, that true family stands by you even from beyond death. And that freedom, real freedom, is worth every sacrifice. The safe deposit box was heavier than I expected. Maybe it was the weight of 2 years of documentation. Maybe it was the weight of Dorothy's protection accumulated over time, layered upon itself like geological strata. Maybe it was just a physical container, and I was projecting meaning onto it, because this was the moment everything changed. But when I slid it out of the vault and placed it on the metal table in front of Olivia, it felt significant. It felt like we were standing at a threshold between two different versions of reality. Olivia stared at it. She didn't reach for it. She didn't move. She just looked at it like it might explode. Like opening it would detonate something inside her that couldn't be reassembled. Go ahead, I said gently. Open it. Charlie stepped back, giving us space. The vault was quiet except for the hum of the climate control system. Everything about this moment felt suspended, held in amber waiting. With trembling hands, and I noticed her hands were shaking, my daughter opened the box. The first thing she saw was the journal. The leather-bound notebook worn from 2 years of use, filled with 800 pages of handwriting. My handwriting. 2 years of my life compressed into leather and paper and ink. The spine was creased. The cover showed marks from being handled, from being carried in my briefcase, from being consulted and reconsidered and added to week after week. Olivia picked it up. She felt the weight of it in her hands. She ran her fingers over the leather, and then she opened it and looked at the first entry in the pale light of the vault. January 2024. Derek is now my son-in-law, and I'm beginning to see patterns. She looked up at me with confusion in her eyes. Pain. Recognition dawning. I documented everything, I said simply. Everything he did. Everything Rebecca did. Every pattern. Every moment of escalation. Every lie. I took the journal from her, and I started reading. Not from the beginning, there was too much to absorb all at once, but from the entries that documented the physical abuse. The entries from July, when I'd first seen the bruises on her arm. I read about the yoga story she'd told me. I read about my own analysis of the hand size, the grip pattern, the evidence. As I read aloud, Olivia began to understand. She understood that while she was being told she was paranoid, while she was being told that her father was controlling her, while she was being told that her mother's friend Rebecca was the only one she could trust, I had been paying attention. I had been watching. I had been documenting. I had been building a record of everything that was happening to her. Every moment of isolation. Every instance of financial control. Every piece of information that Rebecca extracted and reported back to Derek. She began to cry. Under the journal were the photographs. High-resolution images of bruises on her arm, her shoulder, her hip. Places where Derek had grabbed her or shoved her or held her too tightly. Each photograph was labeled with a date and time in my handwriting. Each one was part of a progression. Each one showed the escalation from psychological control to financial manipulation to physical violence. That she hadn't imagined it? That she wasn't crazy? Underneath the photographs were the documents. So many documents. The prenuptial agreement that Derek had wanted her to sign without reading carefully. The family trust that Dorothy had established years ago to protect her. The life insurance policies with specific beneficiary designations. The will, the financial statements, $2 million in life insurance, directed to the trust, untouchable by Derek, protected by legal language that Dorothy had insisted on before Olivia was even born. $1.8 million in the house in Chicago where I'd raised her. In Dorothy's name, originally transferred to a trust that couldn't be seized or claimed by a spouse without specific consent and legal proceedings. $700,000 in other assets. Stocks, bonds, savings, retirement accounts. All protected. All part of a system that Dorothy had put in place 15 years ago, long before Derek existed, long before any of this happened. Dorothy had built a fortress around her daughter's future, even from beyond death. Your mother, I said, watching Olivia take in the numbers, the legal language, the systematic protection, knew something about the world that I didn't fully understand back then. She knew that love wasn't always enough. She knew that sometimes you need more than feelings. You need protection, legal protection, financial protection. She wanted to make sure that no matter what happened, you would have options. You would have safety. Olivia was staring at the documents, like she was seeing them for the first time. In a way, she was. These weren't just pieces of paper to her anymore. They were her mother's arms reaching across 15 years to protect her. They were her mother's voice saying, I know what kind of men exist in the world. I know what they're capable of. I know that love can be weaponized, and I'm going to make sure you have something they can't take away. Dorothy had known. Somehow, Dorothy had known. Not the specifics, not Derek's name or face, but she'd known that her daughter would need protection. That was a mother's foresight. But there was one more thing in the box. Something that made Olivia's breath catch in her throat. A letter. Addressed in careful handwriting to Olivia. Sealed in a cream-colored envelope. The paper inside was thick, expensive, the kind you buy when you're writing something that matters. And on the front of the envelope, written in Dorothy's hand, the handwriting that Olivia recognized from greeting cards and birthday notes, and all the small ways a mother communicates with her child, were 4 words for Olivia. When you need me most. I pulled out the envelope carefully and handed it to my daughter. Your mother wrote this before she died, I said. She left it in this box with all of these documents. She wanted you to have it when you needed it most. I think that time is now. Olivia took the envelope. She held it like it was made of glass, like it might shatter if she breathed too hard. She turned it over in her hands, looking at her mother's handwriting, looking at the date on the back, a date from 2009, just before Dorothy got sick. She was about to open it when we heard something. A sound from outside the vault. A knock. A voice. Charlie Murphy appeared in the doorway, his expression apologetic. "I'm sorry to interrupt," Charlie said, his voice low and respectful. "But Detective Morgan called. She's asking if you'd like them to bring Rebecca in for questioning now. They have her in custody." Everything stopped. Rebecca. In all of this, the 2 years of documentation, the grappling with Derek, the protection I'd built around my daughter, I'd been so focused on Derek that I'd almost forgotten about Rebecca. But Rebecca had been there the whole time. Rebecca who'd been documenting Olivia just like I had been. Rebecca who'd been working with Derek. Rebecca who'd been helping destroy my daughter by pretending to be her friend. Rebecca was about to face the consequences too. But first, Olivia needed to read her mother's letter. First, my daughter needed to hear from beyond the grave. First, the voice of the woman who'd loved her and protected her from a distance of 15 years needed to speak to this moment. The letter that Dorothy had written when Olivia was just 14 years old, a girl without knowing yet what kind of man she would marry, what kind of friend would betray her, what kind of pain she would endure needed to have its moment. That letter was going to change everything. Olivia opened the envelope with shaking hands. She pulled out a single sheet of thick, cream-colored paper. The handwriting on it was unmistakable. It was her mother's handwriting, the same handwriting that had written birthday cards and permission slips and notes in lunchboxes. The handwriting of a woman who had loved her, who had known her, who had held her in her arms for 14 years before having to let her go. Olivia began to read. "If you're reading this, it means I'm gone. But I'm still protecting you." She paused. Her breath caught. "I know your father loves you like I do. Trust him. He will never let anyone hurt you. That's the difference between a father who loves you and a man who controls you. A real father protects without possession. A real father wants you to be free." Olivia's eyes were already watering. I watched my daughter read her mother's words that had been written in 2009, when Olivia was just a girl, words that somehow contained an understanding of what would come later. "Love is not control." Dorothy's letter continued. "Real love is protection without possession. Real love is freedom. If someone makes you feel small, trapped, or afraid, that's not love. That's control. I know the difference because I've seen it. I've felt it. And I never want you to mistake control for love. I never want you to confuse possession with protection." My daughter's hands were trembling so badly now that the paper shook. Tears were streaming down her face. If you're in a situation where someone is isolating you from people who love you, if someone is controlling your money or your body or your mind, get help. Call the police. Call your father. Call someone. You are stronger than you know, stronger than you'll ever believe you are. But sometimes we all need help being strong. There's no shame in that. There's no weakness in asking for protection. Dorothy had written this. My wife who had been gone for 15 years. My wife who had raised Olivia for 14 years and then had to trust me with the rest. Dorothy had somehow known. She'd known that this moment would come. She'd known that her daughter would need to hear these words at some future date when everything was falling apart. "I love you, sweetheart," the letter concluded. "More than you could ever understand. More than anything I've ever loved in my life. I'm sorry I can't be there to help you. I'm sorry I can't hold you, but I'm leaving your father with instructions and protection and everything he needs to keep you safe. Trust him. Believe him. Know that everything he's doing is because he loves you as much as I do. We're the same, your father and I. We put you first. We always will." It was signed simply, "Forever, Mom." Olivia finished reading and she collapsed. She just folded in on herself, the letter dropping from her hands, her body shaking with sobs. And I did what a father does. I held her. I let her cry against my chest, while her entire understanding of her life reorganized itself. Because that's what Dorothy's letter did. It reorganized everything. It took all the confusing messages, all the times Rebecca had told her I was controlling, all the times Derek had convinced her that her mother's memory was being weaponized against her, all the times she'd been made to feel like she was crazy for wanting to trust her father, and it replaced them with clarity. Dorothy knew. Dorothy had known that someday some man might try to turn Olivia against the people who loved her. Dorothy had known that isolation was a tool. Dorothy had known that control masquerading as love was one of the most dangerous things a person could encounter. And so Dorothy had left this letter, this message from beyond death, this mother's voice saying, "You are not crazy. You are not paranoid. You are not wrong to want to escape. And most importantly, you are loved. Your mother," I said quietly, still holding my daughter as she cried, "knew exactly what kind of protection you would need. Not just legal protection, not just financial protection, but this. She knew you would need to hear her voice telling you that love doesn't look like what Derek showed you. Love doesn't feel like what you've been experiencing. She knew you'd need permission to leave. She knew you'd need to understand that real love sets you free." Olivia looked up at me, her face streaked with tears, her eyes red. "She knew," Olivia whispered. "How did she know?" "Because she was your mother," I said simply. "And mothers know. They see the world, and they understand what can happen. And she loved you enough to prepare for it." We stood there in that vault, in that underground room, filled with boxes that held the financial and legal artifacts of a life, with Dorothy's letter in my hands and Olivia's tears on my shoulder. We stood there, and we understood together that we were not alone. That Dorothy was there through the documents, and the insurance, and the trust, and the letter. Dorothy was still protecting her daughter. Then we heard it. A knock on the vault door. Not a gentle knock. An urgent one. A knock that said, "We need you now." A knock that meant something had changed. Something was happening, something required our immediate attention. Charlie appeared in the doorway, his face urgent. "Tom," he said. "The police just called. Derek got loose. He somehow got away from the officers who were transporting him. They think he might be coming here. They're positioning," but I didn't hear the rest. Because in that moment, everything shifted. The letter in my hands, Dorothy's wisdom, Olivia's tears, all of it suddenly became secondary to one terrifying fact. Derek was coming. It's December 2024, 6 weeks after Derek's arrest at the bank. Rebecca is already in custody, picked up at a motel, 2 days after Derek trying to run with a bag full of money and the notebook full of her damning evidence against herself. The office of Marcus Sullivan, our attorney, is on the 32nd floor of a downtown building. The view overlooks Lake Michigan, but I'm not looking at the view. I'm looking at the boxes of evidence stacked on Marcus's conference table. "The prosecution is solid," Marcus says, spreading documents across the mahogany surface. Derek's arrest at the bank, the surveillance footage, the tools found in his vehicle, your journal, the photographs, Rebecca's notebook. It's all admissible. It all supports the narrative of escalating abuse. Paul sits beside me. He's been present for every major decision since the beginning, offering his support, his friendship, his belief that justice is possible. "What about Derek's defense?" Paul asks. Marcus shakes his head. "He'll deny everything, but the evidence doesn't care about his denials. The physical evidence speaks louder than any lawyer can. The bolt cutters, the rope, the steel pipe, these aren't tools you carry around for innocent reasons." I think about that moment in the bank. The moment Derek's mask fell away completely. The moment he showed Olivia, showed the world exactly who he is. "There's something else," Marcus says. He pulls out a file. "Rebecca is cooperating. She's willing to testify that Derek planned all of this, that he manipulated her into helping him. That the notebook was his idea, a way to gather leverage against Olivia and her family." Paul leans back in his chair. So she's turning state's evidence in exchange for a lighter sentence, yes. The prosecution thinks that's reasonable given her age and her manipulation by Derek. She's not innocent, but she's also not the architect of this crime. Derek is. I look at the 800-page journal I've brought with me. It sits on the edge of Marcus's table, a testament to 2 years of careful documentation. 2 years of watching my daughter suffer while building a case that would eventually set her free. When does the trial begin? I ask. January 2025. Marcus says. About 4 weeks. We'll file our motions, the prosecution will file theirs, and then we prepare witnesses. You'll need to testify about the journal. Olivia will testify about her experience. Paul might be called to corroborate the isolation and concern you both expressed. I'll be there, Paul says immediately. Marcus stands and shakes my hand. You did good work, Mr. Richardson. You protected your daughter. You documented everything. You didn't take vigilante justice into your own hands. You trusted the system, and the system is going to work. That night, I sit with Olivia on my porch. She's quieter now than she used to be, but it's not the quietness of fear. It's the quietness of someone who's been through something terrible and survived it. So I saw the list of charges, she says. For Derek. For Rebecca. We don't need to talk about it if you don't want to, I offer. Manni affordi, she says. I want to. I want to understand what he was planning to do, so I tell her. Not all the details, I protect her where I can, but the important parts. Derek wasn't satisfied with controlling her financially and emotionally. He was escalating. The tools in his car suggested he was planning something far worse. Something that would have ended differently if Thomas hadn't set the trap at the bank. Thank you, Olivia says simply, for documenting everything, for not giving up, for protecting me. That's what fathers do, I tell her. We protect our daughters. The trial is 2 months away. Rebecca is in custody. Derek is in custody. The evidence is airtight. Justice is coming. I'm standing outside the police station when they bring Derek in. My hands are shaking, not from cold, but from the weight of what's finally happening. Everything I documented, every page of that leather journal, every photograph, every careful note taken in the dark hours when I couldn't sleep, it's all real now. It's all here. Detective Rob Morgan pushes through the glass doors with Derek in handcuffs. Derek's face is different now. The charm is gone. The calculated smile that once fooled my daughter is replaced with something raw and desperate. His eyes scan the hallway like a trapped animal looking for an escape route that doesn't exist. Derek Hayes and Rebecca Hayes. Morgan announces, his voice steady and official. You're under arrest for domestic violence, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to commit fraud. The words land heavy in the air around us. I hear them, but they feel surreal, like I'm watching someone else's story unfold on a screen. Derek starts protesting immediately. This is bullshit. This is a setup, my wife. But Morgan doesn't let him finish. He reads Derek his rights with the same calm professionalism I've seen 100 times on television, except now it's real. Now it's about my daughter. Now it's about the 2 years I spent documenting everything in that leather journal, while pretending I didn't see the slow destruction happening right in front of me. I watch as they secure the handcuffs tighter around Derek's wrists. He struggles, pulling against the metal, his jaw clenched so hard I can see the muscles working beneath his skin. For a moment, I see exactly what Olivia was trapped with. Not the charming man who asked about our family finances over dinner. Not the son-in-law who smiled and listened. This version of Derek, angry, frantic, losing control, this is who he's always been underneath the surface. You don't understand, Derek keeps saying. You don't know what happened. She's lying to you. But his words dissolve into noise as the officers guide him deeper into the station. Detective Jennifer Martinez approaches me with a cardboard evidence box. Her face is professionally neutral, but I can see the gravity in her eyes. Your journal is secure, she says quietly. We've cataloged everything. The photographs, the financial records, all of it. 800 pages. That's comprehensive documentation. I nod, but I can't speak. The journal. 800 pages of my daughter's suffering documented by a father who couldn't stop it, but refused to ignore it. Every entry a small act of resistance against the darkness creeping into her life. Every photograph a timestamp. Every note a promise that someone saw, someone witnessed, someone cared enough to write it down. What about Rebecca? I ask, finally, my voice hoarse from not using it. She's being brought in separately, Martinez explains. She was picked up at a motel about 15 minutes away. She had a notebook on her, appears to be logs of conversations, financial transactions, photographs of Olivia's phone messages. She was documenting too, but for different reasons. The irony doesn't escape me. Two people keeping records, one to protect, one to exploit. But as Martinez continues explaining, something becomes clear. Rebecca's notebook isn't just documentation. It's something far more calculated. We've reviewed the notebook, Martinez says. It's highly detailed, too detailed. The dates, times, amounts, conversations. It's almost like she was building a case against Derek himself. That's when I understand. Rebecca wasn't loyal to Derek. She was never loyal to Derek. She was loyal to one thing, only money. She was a professional blackmailer using the notebook not to help Derek, but to establish leverage against him. She was planning to use that information to extort him. I say, and it's not a question. Martinez nods. That's our working theory. Once Derek had access to Olivia's assets, the $2 million insurance policy, the $8 million house, the $700,000 in other assets, Rebecca was planning to present this notebook to Derek and demand a cut, a significant cut. If he refused, she'd give everything to law enforcement. It was a win-win for her. Either Derek paid her off, or he went to prison. 15 minutes later, they bring Rebecca in through a different entrance. She's smaller than I remember, almost fragile in the fluorescent lighting of the station. Her eyes are red from crying or from panic, I can't tell. She's still wearing the clothes she fled in, her mascara smudged, her blonde hair pulled back hastily. She's clutching a black leather notebook, the same notebook she used to document Olivia's private conversations. That notebook is both her confession and her attempted insurance policy. The notebook is critical evidence. Martinez continues. It corroborates your timeline. It shows Derek's pattern of behavior, but it also shows Rebecca's intent. She wasn't a victim. She was a conspirator with a separate agenda. The evidence box sits on the desk in front of us. Inside it, the bolt cutters Derek purchased with cash, their teeth sharp and purposeful. The industrial rope coiled like something waiting to strike, the steel pipe 3 feet long, cold and heavy. Gloves, a small flashlight. All of it carefully selected, carefully purchased, carefully planned. But the most damning evidence is Rebecca's notebook, because it shows that the partnership between Derek and Rebecca was never based on loyalty or friendship. It was based on mutual exploitation. Derek was using Rebecca to spy on Olivia. Rebecca was using Derek's crimes to blackmail him. Greed destroys from within. It always does. Both Derek and Rebecca are now in separate interrogation rooms. They've both been advised of their rights. Derek is denying everything, his story shifting with each question. Rebecca is asking for a lawyer, but the evidence against her is overwhelming. The tools against Derek suggest intent to cause serious harm. The notebook from Rebecca suggests premeditated conspiracy and attempted extortion. But what strikes me most is this. It's finally over. Not the legal battle, not the testimony that will come, not the healing Olivia still has ahead of her. But the uncertainty is over. The fear that Derek might slip through the cracks, that Rebecca might disappear, that my careful documentation might not be enough, that fear is finally, definitively over. And more than that, I understand now that Rebecca's own greed, her desire to turn Derek's crimes into personal profit, has sealed both their fates. The notebook she kept to blackmail Derek has become the evidence that will convict her alongside him. The conspiracy she built to extort money has become the final nail in Derek's coffin. Detective Morgan finds me in the hallway before I leave. "You did the right thing," he says. "Not many people have the patience to do what you did, to document, to wait, to trust the process." I thank him, though I'm not sure I ever felt like I was doing the right thing. I felt like I was doing the only thing a father could do, bear witness. And now I understand that Rebecca's avarice, her attempt to turn tragedy into profit, has inadvertently served justice. As I walk out into the cold December air, my phone vibrates. It's a text from Olivia, "Dad. I'm ready to start over now." For the first time in 2 years, I believe her. The courtroom is colder than I expected. Sterile. The kind of place where emotions get filed away like evidence and stored in boxes. It's September 2025, and I've been sitting in this wooden bench for 3 weeks. 3 weeks of testimony, exhibits, arguments, and the machinery of justice grinding forward. I haven't slept properly since the trial started. Every night, I lie awake thinking about what Olivia will say, how the jury will react, whether everything I documented in that leather journal will be enough. Dorothy's face keeps appearing in my mind, not the sick version from the end, but the strong version from before, the woman who somehow knew that her daughter would need protection. The courtroom fills on the first day with journalists, observers, and 12 jurors who don't yet understand what they're about to hear. I wonder if they have daughters. I wonder if they've ever felt helpless watching someone they love get slowly dismantled. Olivia sits in the witness box on day 2, her hands folded so carefully I can see her knuckles are white. She's wearing the blue dress we bought together last month. Her voice wavers at first, then steadies as she describes what happened. Not the physical details, though the prosecutor asks about those, but the other things. The way Derek would check her phone every hour. The way he'd question every dollar she spent, every coffee with a friend, every moment she wasn't under his observation. The way Rebecca would text her at 3 in the morning with concerns about whether she was thinking clearly, whether she trusted her father. The slow suffocation of control. That's what Olivia calls it, and the courtroom goes quiet. I watch the jury. 12 people who didn't know my daughter a month ago. 12 people who now understand what it means to be trapped by someone who claims to love you. A woman in the front row is crying. A man in the back is leaning forward, his expression hard. Marcus Sullivan, our family lawyer, stands and presents the evidence with precision. He holds up the leather journal, my journal, and begins reading. January 2024. Derek is now my son-in-law, and I'm beginning to see patterns. The entries catalog Derek's behavior with clinical accuracy, observation, date, time, analysis. No emotion, just facts. Sullivan enters the photographs into evidence. 8x10 prints enlarged so everyone can see. The bruises on Olivia's forearm, purple and yellow, the exact shape of a hand. The grip marks that looked exactly like 5 fingers closing around her skin. Sullivan asks the forensic expert to explain the physics, restraint, force, intent. He enters the bank surveillance video the moment Derek tried to break into safe deposit box. 247 tools in hand, his movements urgent and calculated. This wasn't a confused husband. This was someone trying to destroy evidence. The jury sees it. Rebecca's notebook is entered next. Pages and pages of it bound in black leather, eerily similar to mine but serving the opposite purpose. Logs of conversations. Olivia spoke to Paul at 2:47 p.m. Call lasted 6 minutes. She sounded upset when she came home. Derek informed. Financial transactions noted in careful handwriting. Screenshots of messages between Olivia and me, between Olivia and her therapist, between Olivia and anyone who might have offered her a way out. Rebecca had been logging everything, reporting to Derek, building leverage, insurance, ammunition, A record of Olivia's life that could be weaponized. Derek's lawyer, Patricia Sullivan, tries to fight back. She argues that the journal is hearsay. She argues that the photographs could be from anything. She argues that Derek was simply a concerned husband, that the financial decisions were made jointly, that Rebecca was a trusted friend. But the jury isn't buying it. I can see it in their faces. They've heard too much. They've seen too much. When Derek takes the stand, he lies. Smoothly at first. I've never hurt my wife. I never asked about her money. I was simply trying to protect our family finances. The bruises she fell during yoga. The tools he was working on a project. The safe deposit box, he thought there were important documents in there. Marcus presents contradiction after contradiction. Here's the email where Derek demands access to Olivia's phone. Here's the bank statement showing transfers. Here's the receipt for the bolt cutters paid in cash. Derek's answers become less smooth. His jaw tightens. The charming smile doesn't work here. Rebecca takes the stand differently. She cries before she even sits down. She says she was under Derek's control too, that he forced her to keep the notebook, that she was afraid of him, that he threatened her if she didn't comply. The prosecutor doesn't buy all of it, but the jury seems to soften. She's young. She was manipulated by an older man. She cooperated with investigators. She's expressed remorse. The financial evidence is presented methodically. The joint account where Olivia's salary went directly to Derek. The hidden account where Rebecca transferred funds that belonged to Olivia. The life insurance policy worth $2 million with Derek listed as beneficiary. If Olivia had died, Derek would have inherited everything. The house comes up. Worth $1.8 million held in a trust that Dorothy created 15 years ago. That one detail saves everything. Dorothy's foresight protects her daughter. The jury needs to understand the full picture of what Derek was trying to access and control. On the final day, the judge delivers his verdict. Derek is found guilty on all counts: domestic violence, financial exploitation, conspiracy to commit fraud. 15 years in prison. Rebecca is found guilty as well, but with a recommendation of leniency due to cooperation. 8 years. She sobs in the dock, and I feel nothing watching her. No satisfaction. No anger. Just relief. Olivia cries too, but differently. She's not crying for Derek or Rebecca. She's crying because it's finally real, because the machinery of justice worked, because a judge and 12 jurors believed her, believed me, believed Dorothy, whose letter and foresight created the entire scaffolding that held this case together. Marcus shakes my hand after. Your documentation made this case possible, he says. Without that journal, without your precision, this might have gone very differently. I thank him, but I'm thinking about Olivia. I'm thinking about the years ahead, the therapy she'll need, the trust she'll have to rebuild, the way she'll learn that love doesn't mean control, that safety isn't something that should require constant vigilance. As we walk out of the courthouse into September, sunlight, Olivia takes my hand. She doesn't say anything. She just holds on the way she used to when she was small and afraid of storms. The trial is over. Derek and Rebecca are both convicted, both sentenced. And that's when the real work of recovery finally begins. January 2026, 1 year after the trial. I'm sitting in a coffee shop watching Olivia laugh with Paul, and something inside me finally settles. She's different now. Not because the trauma has vanished, it hasn't, but because she's learning to live alongside it instead of being consumed by it. Every Thursday at 2 o'clock, she sits in Dr. Helen Martinez's office and talks about what it means to love yourself when you've been taught that you're not worthy of love. Dr. Martinez is patient. She's good at her job, but I know that Olivia is doing the real work herself. Dad, you're staring, Olivia says, catching my eye. She's smiling. Actually smiling, not the polite smile she used to force for Derek's benefit, but the real one, the one that reaches her eyes. Sorry, I say. Just proud of you. Paul joins us at the table with 3 coffees. He's been back in Olivia's life for about 8 months now, ever since the conviction. He cried when he saw her again for the first time after everything. I knew something was wrong, he told me later. I just didn't know how bad it was. Olivia has started reconnecting with her old friends. The ones Rebecca systematically isolated her from. The ones who never stopped wondering where she went. Coffee dates have turned into movie nights and weekend hikes. She's rebuilding the parts of her life that Derek and Rebecca tried to erase. 3 months ago, Olivia met someone. His name is Sam, and he's a photographer. He asks her opinion about things. He respects her time with friends and family. He listens when she talks about her fears, without trying to fix them or minimize them. He understands that love means making space for someone to be fully themselves. It's early, but I can see the difference. This is what real love looks like. One evening in mid-January, Olivia comes to my house, and we sit on the porch overlooking the Chicago skyline. The city glitters below us, indifferent and beautiful. I've been reading your journal, she says quietly. The one you kept while I was with Derek. My stomach tightens. I've been waiting for this conversation, dreading it, and hoping for it in equal measure. I know why you wrote it, she continues. I understand now that you were protecting me, that every entry was an act of love, not surveillance. But Dad, I also need you to know I'm not angry. I'm grateful. I should have done more, I say. I should have stopped me from marrying him. She shakes her head. You couldn't have. I wouldn't have listened. I needed to learn this lesson myself. But you made sure I had proof. You made sure that when everything fell apart, I wasn't alone in trying to convince people of the truth. She pulls out an envelope. Inside is Dorothy's letter photocopied. I want to share this, Olivia says. Not for revenge, but because there are other women and men trapped like I was. They need to know that love isn't control. They need to hear it from someone they trust. We talk about Dorothy that night. About the woman who somehow anticipated her daughter's future and built protections into trusts and wills and letters written to a girl not yet in high school. About how love transcends death. About how the most powerful inheritance isn't money, it's wisdom. Dorothy was protecting you even from the grave, I tell Olivia. That trust, that house, that letter, she was saying you matter. Your safety matters. You deserve freedom. And you protected me in the present, Olivia says, with the journal, with the photos, with documentation and patience and love. I realize then what I've learned through all of this. That protection isn't control. That love isn't possession. That real strength lies in creating space for people to be themselves while ensuring they're safe. Olivia's therapist, Dr. Martinez, helped her understand something crucial. Healing isn't linear. Some days are harder than others. Some days the memories surface unexpectedly, and Olivia has to ground herself in the present moment, reminding herself that Derek is in prison, that she's safe, that she's free. But Dr. Martinez also teaches her that healing is possible, that trauma doesn't have to define your future. Over the next few weeks, Olivia makes the decision to go public with her story. Not all of it, she protects her privacy where it matters, but enough. She shares Dorothy's letter on social media. She talks about the signs she missed, the way isolation happens gradually, the way control masquerades as love. The response is overwhelming. Hundreds of messages from people saying, I didn't know what was happening to me until I read your words. I'm leaving now because of your story. Thank you for making me realize I'm not alone. One message comes from a woman named Jessica. She's in a situation similar to where Olivia was. She's isolated from her family. Her boyfriend is slowly taking control. She's terrified, and she has nowhere to go. Olivia helps her. She connects her with resources. She sits on the phone and listens while Jessica cries. And in that moment, Olivia's pain becomes purposeful. Her survival becomes a bridge for someone else's escape. On a cold evening in January, I sit down to write the final entry in my own journal. 800 pages have become a chronicle of love and protection. They've become evidence. They've become a textbook on the anatomy of abuse. But more than that, they've become proof that someone was paying attention. Someone cared enough to write it down. I think about what I would tell other fathers, other mothers, other people who suspect that someone they love is being harmed. Document everything. Not from a place of suspicion, but from a place of love. Write down what you see. Take photographs. Keep records. Don't confront if it isn't safe. Trust the process. And when the moment comes, when your loved one is ready to escape, have everything ready to help them prove what happened. Most importantly, understand that love isn't control. Real love creates freedom. Real love protects without possessing. Real love trusts the other person to be fully themselves. Derek is in prison. Rebecca is in prison. But Olivia is free. She's rebuilding. She's learning to trust again, not blindly, but wisely. She's discovering who she is, without someone else's hand controlling every decision. And she's helping others find their way out of the darkness. That's the legacy I want to leave. Not just for Olivia, but for anyone reading this story. If you see the signs, isolation, financial control, emotional manipulation, physical abuse, speak up. Reach out. Document what you witness. Call the police. Trust the legal system. And above all, believe the person who tells you they're suffering. Because love that requires silence is not love at all. This is my story. Now it's time for you to protect the people you love. Looking back at my story now, I realize I made mistakes. I should have spoken up sooner. I should have trusted my instincts earlier. But I also learned something profound. Recognizing abuse isn't always clear-cut. It happens in layers. It disguises itself as love. My advice to you, don't be like me. Don't wait. If you see the signs, isolation from family, financial control, emotional manipulation, act immediately. Document everything. Call for help. Trust your gut. God gave us instincts for a reason, and mine were screaming that something was terribly wrong with my daughter's marriage. Here's what I've learned. Real love never requires you to disappear. Real love never demands financial surrender. Real love never makes you afraid. God teaches us that love is patient, kind, and free. But husband revenge plots and drama family betrayals, these aren't love. They're predation dressed up in romantic language. The lesson is simple drama. Family situations often hide husband revenge schemes. Derek didn't marry Olivia out of love. He married her out of calculation. With God's guidance and the legal system's protection, we stopped him. I share this story not for entertainment, but as a warning. As a blueprint for what to watch for. As proof that speaking up saves lives. If you're trapped like my daughter was, know this: there are people ready to listen. There are laws that protect you. There is a way out. To those in similar situations, document everything like I did. Build your case quietly. Reach out to trusted people. God doesn't want you suffering in silence. Call a lawyer. Call the police. Call someone. This is a drama family story with real consequences. This is what happens when husband revenge meets justice. This is what recovery looks like. If my story resonates with you, please share it. Because somewhere, another daughter is being controlled. Another father is watching helplessly. Another mother's legacy lives on through protection. Subscribe, like, and share if this story mattered to you. Important disclaimer. This story is dramatized for educational purposes. Some details are fictional, but the core lessons about recognizing financial and emotional abuse are real. If this storytelling style isn't for you, please seek out content that better suits your needs.